to South West London TV. I'm Chauhan. I'm here at the offices of Le Bureau, which is a co-working space used by small and medium-sized businesses. I have Paul Mitchell, who's the owner and founder of Le Bureau, and I also have Nathaniel McCullough, who's the owner of Simply Learning Tuition, who runs his business from here. With the EU referendum fast looming, I'm here to talk to businesses about how they will vote, whether they would be better in or out, and whether other considerations like sovereignty or immigration will inform their opinion. Welcome to you both. So Nathaniel, if I can start with you. You've been listening to the Leave and Remain arguments on TV and the media. What have you made of them so far, and has it kind of informed your decision about which way to vote?
We run a small private tuition agency, so our job is to introduce private tutors to families all over the world, really. We work globally, but most of our clients are in London. And I'd say at a guess, 30 to 35% of the clients we work with who live in London are EU nationals who are here for work. They've come over with a bank or with a law firm. We also send tutors to different countries within the EU. I've been listening quite intently to the Remain and Leave camps, both of them. And I do have one sort of overreaching opinion on both campaigns, that they've been woefully inadequate in terms of informing the public, just people like me, business owners, about what is actually happening. And I feel there's been lots of misinformation and lots of half-quoted statistics. So typically you get, if we leave the EU, we're going to have to pay back all of this, these benefits, it's going to be terrible. They never give the flip side of what if we stay. And same thing with the Leave campaign. You know, we're spending 2 billion a week or whatever on benefits coming in to immigrants and things. They never give the opposite figure of what net worth those people are bringing to our businesses and to our economy. I've come to a conclusion that for our business, actually, it's not going to be hugely impactful whether we stay or whether we go. We're an international business. The tutors we introduce work all around Europe, within London. We're fortunate in that the clients that we work with are perhaps a little less price sensitive than many other people who will be affected by this vote, but we can't really tell what will happen if we did leave Europe. But after giving quite serious consideration to it, I think that for the best interests of our company, of the people that work for the company, and of the tutors that we work with, and the clients that we serve, both in London and outside of London within the EU and globally, I think we'd be far weaker if we left the EU. So our vote, or my vote as the director of the company, is to stay within the EU.
Paul, same question to you.
I think, like many people, I found much of the campaigning to be confusing, mudslinging, and frankly a lot of personal agendas being followed as opposed to national interests. But that notwithstanding, I have concluded that for a mixture of business reasons and I suppose personal sentiment, I strongly want Britain to remain within the European Union.
So Nathaniel, a lot of institutions and business organisations have put their view forward in terms of the UK remaining in the EU. Should there be a Brexit, how would that impact your business?
I think with many small businesses, it's a complex question. We struggle just to get through the day and to meet our clients' needs. So the bigger question of whether we're going to be financially better off in Europe, it's not as clear cut as it is for a larger company, I think. So we've got many difficult factors to balance. But we don't sell packages. It's not that we have an export market in France or Germany. It's not as simple as that. We introduce intellectual capital in the form of private tutors to families all over the world, many in Europe. And it's really hard for us to say. It's a growing part of our business, and I feel that it's not so much a black and white business decision, because the VAT issues are massively complicated. Our government has done very little to simplify the introduction of services abroad to have a level tax threshold or any sort of treatment of VAT. It's country by country, even within Europe. It's highly complex, but I think their attempts to do the simple VAT charging for the European countries is at least a step forward to something that will make our business administration much easier. But I think what will make a difference is the ethos and the feelings that our clients give to us and that we give back to them in terms of being part of Europe. So I think it is a massive advantage to us to be working in a city that's European and to be able to communicate on a rather equal footing with our French clients, our German clients, our Italian clients. Instead of them being Johnny Foreigner, they're actually part of a much bigger partnership, family, and I think that builds on a sort of subliminal level, a good beginning to a working relationship, and we don't get that with our Russian clients, our Chinese clients, our American clients. It's very, very different.
So you definitely feel that a Brexit would be detrimental.
I
And will it change things much, do you think?
I think it will change things subtly. I think it'll be that these are foreign clients as opposed to EU clients. I think there's likely to be more difficult legislation and more difficult tax implications for us as a small business to manage and to understand fully. And I think the implications of getting it wrong could be more severe. I think at the moment, with the HMRC treatment of VAT for services you provide in European countries, it's reasonably straightforward, and I'd be concerned about changing it. I don't really see any big advantage to changing it, but I'm not a tax expert.
Paul, same question to you.
Basically, we rent desks and meeting rooms to small businesses. We have about 90 small businesses in our serviced office, and they're a good representation of London in that there's a mix of nationalities, there's a mix of regions from the UK from which people come, and the businesses that they operate, small businesses that they operate, serve customers in many instances in Europe, not just within the UK, not just within Europe as well. We've some who trade with the US and with Southeast Asia, but many of our businesses have a European dimension, whether it's selling their services into Europe, whether it is hiring staff from Europe, whether it's dealing with foreign exchange or foreign language or whatever. There's a reasonable, I suppose the cliche is melting pot here, and somehow if barriers were raised that made trade either slower, more difficult, or more expensive with Europe, I know that would be to the detriment of the small businesses that take space with us. I think going beyond that, your question referred to economists and economic organisations that have come out strongly in favour of Remain. I'm not aware of any credible senior economic organisation that the Leave campaign have been able to wheel out to say we have a better and a more guaranteed economic future outside the European Union. What they have claimed is that, it might be better. As the sixth biggest economy in the world, we might be able to negotiate a better trade deal with the US, despite the fact that Obama says get to the back of the queue. The Chinese will tell us to get to the back of the queue. So in the absence of any credible heavyweights on the Leave side saying that we will be economically more secure, and they're prepared to say they can guarantee it, which they are strangely absent in being able to say, then my view, I line up behind, I take the steer that's provided by credible people like Mark Carney, the governor of the Bank of England. And so if the economy is damaged by coming out of the European Union, as it will be, then the number of small businesses starting up or looking, and therefore looking for space from which to base themselves, will decline. That will directly hurt my business. So I'm strongly in favour of remaining within the European Union.
So you would question the Leave campaign, who have the letter which was signed by 300 small businesses saying that they would be better off outside the EU. What would you say to those businesses?
I think two things. I think first of all, as far as I'm aware, the only heavyweight economist that the Leave campaign have been able to drag out is Patrick Minford, and he is on this debate. made famous by the fact that he's won against a multitude of others, of heavyweight, experienced, practicing in positions of power and influence, and so the weight of argument is just overwhelming. In terms of the 300 small businesses, I think two things. First of all, there are hundreds of thousands of small businesses in the UK, probably more than that. So 300 is a tiny proportion of the small business community, and I think it would be wrong to imagine that we can extrapolate from 300 signatures to a view from small business. It's certainly not my view, and it's certainly not the view that I've heard commonly expressed in the Bureau and in and around the other small businesses that I work with. I can imagine that there are some small businesses where the only activity they engage in commercially is local. Businesses which are in some way isolated from the effect of and the need to be engaged with Europe or other parts of the world. And so I can well understand that maybe people in that position may feel, well, what's the point? Europe's not relevant to me, and therefore I prefer to be my own person, absent Europe. I do think, though, there's a myth around, which is that if we were to leave Europe, we would be removing the burden of administration or the burden of regulation, and that suddenly, we'd go back to a world where nobody worried about bendy bananas or yards versus meters or whatever it was. And I really think that that's a myth. I think if we look at many of the burdens of regulation on us today, they're to do with either health and safety, so the safety of our food, the safety of our roads, the safety of our vehicles, or they're the result of consumer pressure. So consumers wanting guarantees that they get their money back if businesses fail to deliver what they're going. Those pressures, the pressures to have better products, safer products, more transparency in what we're selling to our customers, that pressure is not going to be relieved or diminished as a result of leaving the European Union. So I think there's a kind of a fond hope that's misplaced that life goes back to being a simpler, easier life if only we didn't have an engagement with Brussels and elsewhere. I think that's wrong.
And what do you have to say on that matter, Nathaniel?
So it's a really brilliant question that you've asked. I think it's one of the key things that I've picked up on in this entire debate about leaving or staying in Europe. The issue that many small businesses are having problems because of EU red tape. And I think there was a particular UKIP MP, Margaret Parker, who delivered this statistic about, is it something like only 10% of British businesses operate with the EU, trade with the EU, export or import from the EU. But they are 100% of them are affected by the EU regulations. And those regulations are, I can't remember her quote, but it's something to do with having a big control over paternity rights, maternity rights, health and safety at work, environmental regulations, all of this coming from Europe, the Working Hours Directive. And in her words, this is stifling small business growth. And this is, to me, the perfect example of why we need to be in Europe and why a lot of the voices that are saying we shouldn't be are, as far as I'm concerned, just purely wrong. If you operate a good business, you should be looking out for the health and safety of your employees, the environment you work in. You should be developing a business where parents can have children and not be chastised for it. I do understand that it makes business a little more expensive, perhaps. But if you're running a good business, you should cope with that. We certainly do, and we're tiny. We're a tiny company. But we always put a provision for just those things because we have to. And I think that's a very good reason for staying in Europe. So I think the financial objections for a small company are probably outweighed by the benefits that they get.
So would you say that you're pretty relaxed about how we are governed within the EU, about the laws, regulations, legislations, directives that we have to comply with?
No, actually, I'm pretty much the opposite. I think there's a huge opportunity right now, following Cameron's sort of adjusted EU membership model. We have a huge opportunity and a huge need to modify our relationship with Europe, and that should be an ongoing process. It's pretty standard in any relationship. You need change, you need improvement. I care very much about the laws that people have to work under and live under, and if we could exist outside of Europe with a fantastic government that provided better laws than anyone else in Europe, I'd vote for that. But I think if you look at any government we've had over the last 20 years, and you look at the impact we've had from Europe, the net benefit from the European impact it's been positive. I don't think our government's strong enough, I don't think our country's strong enough to deliver as good laws as all of the members of the EU put together are able to deliver.
Do you agree with that, Paul?
I think we should boldly and proudly contribute and expect to have a fully engaged and enormously rewarding existence, contributing within the European Union, remaining a fully paid up and active member of NATO, trading with our American friends, increasingly learning how to trade with our Southeast Asian friends, and I think that's a great place to be.
I think what we're voting on now is fantastically important, and there is very little historical context being put to the fuel for the vote. If you look at the lives that have been saved in Northern Ireland by the recent peace process, if we leave Europe, we immediately have to re-establish an Irish border, and that's one little step away from the massive collectivisation that we've had in that country, and that's going to happen to our relationships with other European countries.
Paul, what's your take on that?
The increasingly cosmopolitan nature of Northern Ireland has, I think, very significantly contributed to the stabilising of that society. And I think in many ways that's sort of a microcosm for Europe as a whole. I mean, why was the European Union formed in the first place? To stop France and Germany going at each other's throats. In the time since the Coal and Steel Pact, we haven't been at war with each other. In fact, we haven't been at war with each other. We live longer. We've got more wealth per capita than we've ever had. What's the problem that the Brexiteers are trying to fix? I don't get it. So I guess I have an emotional attachment to the idea of engagement with other people, other cultures, other nations, and enjoying the richness of what they're able to contribute to us.
In terms of the surveys that have been carried out, one by the British Chamber of Commerce, which says that there's been a closing of the gap of the in and outs, so there's been 7% increase of outs, and the Financial Times has said it's equal with 41% on both sides, and according to these polls, it's going to be a very close run thing. So last question, what do you think it's going to mean for your business, for the economy, for Britain, if there was a Brexit?
As I understand it, most of the money that's been bet with the bookies is on Remain, and the bookies are normally, well, some would say that they're closer to predicting the outcome than the pollsters are. And then the other thing is, when faced with a choice, more of us choose to remain with the status quo than to make a leap into something that's unknown. And you can see that in many examples of how people behave and decisions they make. And I would like to think that in this case, that same behaviour characteristic will apply. And therefore that come June the 23rd, we'll vote to remain.
Thanks very much indeed, Paul. So Nathaniel, same question to you. What would it mean for you if we had a Brexit result in terms of your own business, the economy and Britain as a whole?
Certainly for Simply Learning Tuition, our immediate concern is the ability to serve our clients with the best tutors we can get, the best intellectual minds that we can find. Right now, about 20% of those are European nationals. The PhD students, the young doctors, the teachers we introduce to clients, they're not all British. Many of them come from fantastic universities in France and Italy and other European countries. They're language teachers, some of them. They're leading science lecturers. They come over and they tutor, and they work with British families. Anything that makes it more difficult for them to come to the UK, to work in the UK, and let's be honest, to want to feel welcome here, to feel part of the family, I think will be detrimental for our business. And if it's bad for our little business, how can it be good for the country? I think over the last 5-6 years, the UK has become it's like a job-generating machine. It's helping our economy at a time when I think otherwise it would contract. And I think anything that threatens that is crazy.
Thank you very much, Nathaniel, for joining us and giving us your views on the EU debate. Well, that's all we've got time for today. If you are a local business and would like to give your side of the story around the EU debate, then please get in touch with South West London TV at the links below. That's it from me. I'm Chauhan. This is South West London TV.